Okay, for the first anime that I'm going to be reviewing in this series, I will be taking a look at the social and corporate satire Otaku no Video. The OVA starts with a prologue with our main character, Kubo, essentially working a temp job at Grand Pix, or however it's pronounced, I probably butchered it, and making it clear that he hates otakus, otaku is Japanese for fan. Okay, after the intro, we essentially get basically an insight to Kubo's home life. And believe it or not, he's actually more pathetic than the otaku he feels so entitled to look down on. I mean, yeah, he is in a relationship, but to an extent, his girlfriend controls almost every aspect of his life. Kubo is essentially a college student who pretty much does, well, he only does the things that his girlfriend allows. And currently he's basically just some weenie playing tennis. And he takes it seriously. I mean, this girl actually tells him off, saying he has to be nicer to girls if he wants them to date him. But he was just saying, well, this was him, he wasn't even telling her off. He was just bragging about how she needs to take her tennis practice more seriously because he takes it seriously and that's why he won. In fact, I kind of got the idea when watching this that this guy, the reason he takes his tennis practice so seriously is because it's the only thing his girlfriend will let him have. And I say that because this guy is not an athlete. At no point in the story do they say he's planning to be this big tennis star. No, this is just a hobby for him. The only one his girlfriend approves of. So anyways, later that night, Kubo is at a party with some of his drunken party animal friends who go to the same college he does. You know, the kinds of losers who peak they peak during high school and college. When it's time to essentially grow up and actually become a man, they fizzle out almost instantly and they don't make anything of themselves. Anyways, after the party, Kubo's friends, one of which says he hasn't had enough to drink yet, and as they're getting off, he's getting in, and you can tell just by the look on his face that there is a genuine sense of unbelonging. I'm pretty sure Kubo knows that these guys are losers, and that if he hangs out with them, he could easily end up just like them, essentially accomplishing nothing and ending up a loser. Not wanting to be rude, Kubo essentially uses a upcoming tennis match that'll happen essentially the next day as the means to leave. And the irony of this scene is that these drunken morons are the one who thinks Kubo is the loser here. I mean, these guys don't get screen time at any other point in the OVA. They're the real losers. So anyways, Kubo runs into a group of people in the elevator, led by Tanaka, Kubo's best friend from high school. When Kubo asks what Tanaka has been up to in the past years as they catch up, he reveals that he's in a manga research group and he's the group's jack of all trades. After Kubo and Tanaka begin catching up, it then cuts to the first Portrait of an Otaku segment. Of all, these were the worst part of the OVA. And I will talk about these after I'm done reviewing. So anyways, back to the OVA. So anyways, Kubo then gets lunch with his girlfriend and they talk about, current events, what he's been up to, essentially what we saw in the prologue, and in the scene before the first Portrait of an Otaku segment. So anyways, Tanaka's girlfriend, whose name I don't remember, asks him if he's still playing tennis. And this is actually a very good deep dive into her psyche. You see, when she says playing tennis, or in this case asks if he's still playing tennis, what she's really asking him is if he's still doing the one and only thing she approves of. And she does it in a very passive way. I mean, it's not until the ending that we find out what a massive bitch she is. And she admits that she's not really that busy now that she's a sophomore. And believe me when I say, this will come up big time come the end. Kubo tells his girlfriend about a festival that's gonna happen at his school and asks her to show up and he could show her around campus. But she declines. And this is actually one of the most important scenes in Otaku no Video. Kubo's booth is not selling at all. I mean, he's getting no customers. Now off shift, Kubo is walking around where he essentially runs into Tanaka, who is cosplaying as a Gundam character. I don't know which one, but I'm pretty sure the character is from the original series. Kubo asks Tanaka what's going on, and Tanaka reveals that he struck a deal with the school so they could sell their fanzine there. Kubo learns about cosplay when he sees, I think her name is Miyoshi Sato, dressed up like Invader Girl Lum. We actually do get a lot of cameos or people cosplaying as famous anime characters in this scene. So anyways, after the second Portrait of an Otaku segment, Kubo has to call his girlfriend up and essentially tell her that he's gonna be busy. An old friend called him and needs his help. And he tells her that he's quitting the tennis club because he just can't seem to get into tennis like he used to. His girlfriend thinks he's in the freshman slump, but yeah, you can already see cracks in the relationship forming. She's just denying it at this point. They're still together, but the relationship is falling apart, even if she doesn't see it. So anyways, after talking to Tanaka, Kubo is then shown essentially the base where Tanaka and his friends publish their fanzine. Tanaka introduces Kubo to his group of friends that work on the fanzine with him, and then we cut to another Portrait of an Otaku segment. With the third Portrait of Otaku segment essentially done, we cut to Tanaka essentially showing Kubo a video of special effects and a clip of the Daikon Bunny Girl. So anyways, one of Tanaka's friends brings up a young drama series that aired on NHK. Kubo then replies by saying, "I used to watch it every week." When asked whether or not he'd like to watch it again, Kubo admits that he would. Tanaka reveals that that they have every episode from beginning to end on VHS. And in all fairness, from where I'm standing, this makes them seem real cool. The kind of people that you, the viewer, would want Kubo to make friends with. Even if his girlfriend doesn't like it, or if she approves of it. She's not the boss of him. So anyways, then the next day, Kubo's girlfriend, they're talking over lunch, and she brings up the fact that he's never home when she calls. And he says he is, but he's probably just sleeping because he's been up all night. And she asks him if he has a job, and then gasps when he says he kinda does, but he doesn't get paid for it. Then he tells her that he's helping Tanaka with his fanzine. It's kinda obvious here that their relationship is pretty much dead when she asks him why he isn't getting paid. I mean, I know Kubo does not, he doesn't tell her how a fanzine works, 'cause he probably doesn't think she'd get it. even though she has a lot of time on her hands and could easily drop by, all he'd have to do is give her the address. But she is apparently so stupid that she asks him why he isn't getting paid. I mean, she didn't even ask him what a fanzine is. Then we get a montage of Kubo learning stuff about different mediums from his new friends. A montage that ends with the 4th Portrait of Otaku segment. After the 4th Portrait of an Otaku segment, Kubo and his new friends go to a convention. They take some pictures with people. So anyways, months later, Kubo is having another lunch with his girlfriend. He can barely keep his eyes open. He put on a little bit of weight and has a bit of a mustache-beard combo growing. And when she asks him if he pulled another all-nighter, he tells her that he went to see a movie premiere for an anime movie and got animation cell. In response to saying that he did, she tells Kubo that he's changed. So anyways, while waiting in line, they encounter a married couple. The husband is drunk, and this gets Kubo thinking about his girlfriend for a slight second. I guess you could say these two are a reflection of what Kubo and his girl could be in the future. They are smug and confuse anime with cartoons, thinking they're the same thing. That bit of dialogue just goes to show that this drunk and his wife are completely out of date and behind the times. One of Tanaka's friends got some sketches for an upcoming anime. While he himself brings up to Kubo that this one character looks like his girlfriend. And this really gets him thinking about her. Mayoshi, I think her name was, basically then suggests to Kubo that he invite his girlfriend to come with them next time they're gonna go see a movie or go to an anime convention. He just says, okay, because as established, he already tried inviting her to one, and she did everything she could to avoid answering, which is it's kind of obvious that she didn't want to go. Because like the couple we just saw, this is someone who's behind the times. And she views people in any fandom over the age of 12 as basically a freak. She thinks that otaku are just a bunch of freaks. Anyways, Kubo then calls his girlfriend, Yoshiko, or should I say his ex-girlfriend, because the minute he calls her, he finds out that she's cheating on him. Which we then see him in the next scene being depressed with Tanaka. And this is where the satire really begins to shine. Kubo brings up, kind of in a way, he asks if you play tennis, which is something Yoshiko approved of, you're normal, but if you watch anime, you're weird. It's basically, he's basically bringing up what a bitch Yoshiko is. And then Kubo snaps. He gets up and decides that he's gonna stop hunting for a job. Him and Tanaka are going to team up. They're going into business for themselves as otaku, and they're going to be famous. This instantly inspires Tanaka to join his best friend, and he instantly quits his job hunt too. And that's where the OVA ends, with Kubo and Tanaka deciding to become the ultimate fans, and Kubo, in the sequel he says this, but he wants to make Yoshiko regret ever dumping him. Now that I have reviewed the plot, I'm going to talk about the Portrait of an Otaku segment, which in my opinion are the weakest parts of the OVA, since in segment 2, the otaku being interviewed freaks out and tries to hide a fanzine out of shame, and then puts on either paper or cardboard helmet a replica of the helmet worn by, I think his name was Red Comet from the original Gundam series, and quotes him, which kinda makes him look like a hypocrite. I mean, is he okay with people knowing he likes Gundam, or isn't he? Or not just Gundam, anime in general. These were the weakest parts of the OVA. I mean, they interviewed several fans. Some were ashamed of being fans, while others were not. And I think this guy was, I don't know, but I think there was a joke in there about him making a bootleg or having a bootleg item, either making one or having one, and selling it to someone. And here's the thing, not all of the men who are interviewed in these segments are what you'd think. I mean, fan does not essentially equal nerd, despite what the garbage on American TV would tell you. I mean, I went to EFA growing up, and believe me when I say, this guy here is way more of a badass than all of the Blue Devils put together. And when I say that, I actually mean it. All teams, all generations, all alumni, every single boy on the EFA Blue Devils, for as long as the school has been around, this guy is more of a badass than every single one of them combined. I mean, every member of the Blue Devils, from when the school was founded to now, could be rolled into one, and that football playing loser would be nothing compared to this guy. Despite my opinion, I think the reason that the Portrait of Otaku segments work so well is because they don't vilify fandom like something you'd see on Western TV. Western TV would do something like that. I mean, this abomination right here solely exists to vilify fandoms. And although I stand strong in my opinion that Portrait of an Otaku is the weakest part of Otaku no Video, it's actually not as bad as you'd think. I mean, covering these guys' faces up with mosaic is more or less a joke. It's not something that you would want to take seriously. And it's not something to be taken seriously. They interview fans, but like I said, unlike with Western TV, they don't go out of their way to vilify them. And the last thing that I want to touch on before completing this review is the character of Yoshiko. In all fairness, she is a really good part of the satire. And, I mean, she does the whole pretending to be sweet but secretly being a bitch thing really well. I mean, the line where she asks him if he's still playing tennis, but that's actually code for asking him if he is still doing the one and only thing among his hobbies that she actually approves of, was not only done really well, but it's something that was completely ahead of its time. But here's the thing. If she actually cared about Kubo at all, she would have actually invested more than one night a week into their relationship once she knows that he's helping Tanaka publish his fanzine. She could ask for the address and stop by at any time, but she didn't. And when Kubo asks her to go see a Unico movie with him and possibly his new friends, she does whatever she can to avoid giving him an answer, because in her mind, she thinks that these people are inferior to her. Which is the same exact point of view that fictional assholes like these characters would hold. Yoshiko, to me, seems like the kind of girl who really cares about what everyone else thinks of her. 'Cause even in this scene where she mentions that Kubo has changed, she is really working it. She is really hamming it up. She is putting on this act that she actually cares about him. And yeah, if there was a camera around, she might actually have been able to win an Oscar for her performance. When in reality, he defied her by getting into anime and getting back into his old interests. She only stayed with him because she wanted to break up with him at the right time. Which would be over the phone, where no one outside her new boyfriend can actually verify what she said or how it happened, and should this come up in public, Yoshiko can easily do her best to spin the story around and make Kubo look like a unreasonable jerk, which, believe you me, because if she broke up with him in this scene, I mean, for all we know, there are other people in the restaurant, and that's why she's putting on this act. I mean, people might think that she's a bitch. And she really, really wants, or in a deranged way, might actually need people to think that she's this sweet, pretty girl, when in reality, she's just a shallow whore. Based on how well she was keeping this goody two-shoes act up, and was able to really make anyone around them at the time seem like she cared about him, I can easily assume that is something that she would be really, really good at. And even if she was able to turn people against Kubo, make him sound like a selfish, unreasonable asshole, I'm pretty sure that this guy's suffering wouldn't end there, as all of Yoshiko's bitch friends would show up, corner him, and jump down his throat, metaphorically speaking, and verbally tear him apart, either first chance they get, or right after Yoshiko cried, metaphorically, and tried to convince everyone that she was so sensitive and understanding, and her ex was just being an asshole all the time. And then there's the fact that anyone with a brain who saw a scenario, who would be witnessing a scenario like that, would be able to tell that she's pulling all of it out of her butt. But the thing is, stupid people would be fooled by it. In the sequel, Yoshiko pretty much pilfers Kubo's company right from under him, all because she couldn't handle him having an interest she didn't approve of. I mean, that is so immature. And yes, I know this is satire, but today this seems unbelievably realistic. A completely passive bitch who's so controlling about what her boyfriend does that the minute that he pretty much gets an interest she doesn't approve of, she goes from pretty and conservative to raging feminist who wants vengeance. And if this is how she reacts to him having an interest she doesn't approve of, then I can't imagine how she would have reacted if he broke up with her. She's a controlling bitch who can't stand the thought of her boyfriend having at least one hobby she doesn't approve of. In all fairness, that is part of the satire. Nowadays, I've actually heard stories of men who had to either pretend they weren't anime fans or hide their fandom because it might destroy his relationship. And that's just messed up. And it's part of the satire. Because nowadays, there are women like Yoshiko who literally need their boyfriends or husbands to exist in a state where their entire world revolves around her, while at the same time putting in as little effort as humanly possible. Within the first 15 minutes of the OVA, it's established that Yoshiko has a lot of time to herself, and she only interacts with Kubo one day a week. He invited her to come to the Mayfest at his school, and she didn't show up. When Kubo asked her to go see that Unico movie with him, she did everything that she could to dodge the question. And it's kind of a blessing in disguise that she broke up with Kubo, or else he might have turned out like this sap here. Or if anything, that's how exactly how he would have turned out. I'm pretty sure the OVA tried to imply that this loser, this drunk, is what Kubo would have become if he stayed with that bimbo Yoshiko. The way Yoshiko acts kind of reminds me of this little hypothetical scenario I made up, where I'm in a relationship and I take my girlfriend to a Dragon Ball Z movie. I mean, the kind that would have been subbed by Anime Labs. And when I say take, I mean dragged. She would be constantly trying to get out of it. Probably chugging down soda like crazy so she'd have to go to the bathroom. Or even going so far as to make up a whole ton of excuses to avoid it. 'Cause she probably would have been sitting there confused, not understanding what's going on. And this is a scenario I made up back in 2014. And I created an alternate version set in early 2002. Because as sad as it is, there actually are women out there who act like Yoshiko and want your entire world to revolve around her. And I was talking to my dad about this scenario, joking about how I'd have to do something like take her out to a very expensive brunch the next day on Sunday to make up for dragging her to see a fan-subbed anime movie. And in all fairness, that's kinda really messed up that I would even need to do that, even hypothetically. If he did, they would have turned out like Shin's parents from Shin-chan. The only difference is the relationship would have only lasted a year, and Yoshiko would have cheated on him and divorced him with someone who's either stronger than Kubo or richer than him, and then she would have dumped him. So, in reality, if he got a job and eventually married her, Kubo and Yoshiko's relationship would have pretty much ended up in the same exact way. I think the OVA is good, and in fact, I'm pretty sure this was most likely the inspiration for Bakuman. I could definitely see Tanaka being the inspiration for Misharo. I probably butchered that. And Tanaka having been the inspiration for Takagi. I'm gonna end this review by saying that Otaku no Video is an excellent OVA. It is both social and corporate satire. You might not get that the first time you watch it, but if you dig deep enough, you'll see where the jokes are and how unbelievably ahead of its time this movie is. I mean, they called a lot of things years before they actually happened, even before social media. And I'll just end this video by saying one word: otaking!